Stop wasting your time, then just turn the time over to Curtis Morley and Alessio from Docebo, and we will go from there.
Good morning, everybody. So glad you're here. And I know it's Vegas. I know last night you probably were all having some fun, but thanks for coming to our session. We've got some exciting things to talk about, some really exciting things to talk about. And this session is really about the trends and what we're seeing. And just an introduction, if you don't know Docebo, Docebo is one of the groups in our industry that produces amazing reports. If you haven't gotten the yearly report, you need to go to Docebo. They do a yearly report on what is the state of the industry. You know, what's happening? What are companies spending on e-learning? What's going around the world as far as global, as far as generational trends? I mean, they're amazing. So excited to be talking here with Alessio and getting into some of the things that you can take away today as far as what are the trends for e-learning with your company.
Well, thank you everybody for being here. I hope Vegas is treating you really well, but not too well. I'm excited to be presenting here today with Curtis and the eLearning brothers, our friends. We share a common view of the world of learning that goes beyond perhaps it being really boring, but we're very focused on making it very exciting. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about how we see the world of learning and learning technologies, and hopefully you're going to be enjoying it.
Yeah, and remember, what happens in Vegas stays on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. It doesn't ever go away. But we're glad you're here. So let's talk about where we have come from. If you take a look at the top right hand or top left hand corner, where we've come from is back in the day we all did instructor-led training. We all stood in front of a classroom. We all had a whiteboard marker. Maybe some had a piece of chalk. We all learned from instructors. And as technology progressed, we said, you know what? We need to start tracking this, because if things are measured, then if performance is measured, performance improves. And so we decided, hey, let's get an LMS. And so some of the first LMSs popped up. There's a couple around here. You've got Blackboard, you've got Torch, you've got several different LMSs, you know, all sorts of different systems. And then we decided, hey, let's push beyond this. Let's get a little farther in.
However, in terms of what matters to the learners, at the end of the day, is to feel engaged, to feel empowered, to feel enabled. So when surveying people in organizations, we'll find more and more and more that learners, millennials, Generation Z, want to be part of the picture, take an active role in it, rather than being told. That's what we mean by the notion of social learning, which at Docebo we've been promoting for quite a while now. Social learning does have an impact. It does make an impact, and being able to bring together the results that impact makes, along with the more top-down approach of LMS, and forever will be instructor-led, is the power of bringing it all together and analyzing performance in people's behaviors.
Awesome. Can you guys hear us okay? Does everybody hear us okay? Fantastic. So that's where we've come from. And you might say, well, wait a minute, social learning, isn't that where we're going in the future, and engagement, etc.? I would say we're already there. Now let's take a look at where are we right now, and let's talk about some developments as we move forward. So one of the big things that's coming on the scene now is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence for learning. You know, we've heard about artificial intelligence in other realms. Artificial intelligence on Facebook, artificial intelligence in autonomous cars. We've heard about that. Well, what about AI for learning? You know, what's happening in the world of AI for learning? There's some amazing things going on, and along with that, we take a look at not just AI as you've thought of it in the past, but AI in several different arenas. What about content creation? Using AI to actually create content. So it goes way beyond just AI figuring things out. AI is actually able to produce content, and you might think that, okay, well, there's a difference between what computers can produce and what machines can produce. Microsoft recently, they took this concept of content creation and the actual creative side of content creation and said, we're going to try this for a commercial. So they had an ad agency that they've worked with create a commercial for a product, and they had a computer create an ad for a product. And the computer went through, cut the video clips, actually first grabbed the video clips, aggregated it, cut the video clips, put in the music, put in the segments, transitions, and they tested it with 2 groups of people. And those 2 groups of people actually selected the AI commercial as a better commercial, more compelling, ready to purchase the product. So AI can go deep into things like testing and the different algorithms behind testing, etc. So we'll keep going here.
It is time. Well, first off, I have news for you guys. For all of those, can I have a hand raise on those that are involved in content creation and learning administration on a daily basis? Okay, that's a lot of you guys. There's hope. Here's the news. There's hope. And by that I mean that for so long, we've all been so focused, and our time is currently being spent in a lot of tasks that we can simplify with the word manual. They're time-consuming, they are brain-frustrating, and nobody likes them. The technology has surpassed this situation. We're now able to resolve this issue. So, in terms of complete learning automation, it embraces not just the idea of automating the creation of content, but it's also about automating those tasks that allow you to manage a learning platform better and faster. To be a little bit more practical and bring it down a notch, why spending time in enrolling users in courses when we have information about the fact that certain users need to be enrolled in certain courses? Curtis spoke about AI. At Docebo, we've invested in the past year and a half with an entire task force or team in our R&D department that's solely dedicated to AI algorithms. The algorithms will determine patterns of behavior of users' population and automate things such as tagging of content. There is no need anymore of going through a tagging or categorization when an AI algorithm can read and scrap through PDF files, scorn packages, videos and audios, extract audio and auto-tag content, and then we, instructors, can help the algorithms learn better how to improve this tagging operation. And tagging is just one very small example. How about recommending content that is relevant to people's jobs for the future? We spoke about performance and skill. Let's connect the dots. Let's help people get the learning that is relevant to what they need to become on time. And that content, by the way, doesn't have to exist where we exist. A lot of content exists in the ecosphere of the world. There's YouTube, there's Coursera's, there's a lot of sources. How about a world and a system or systems that allow us to aggregate this knowledge based on what people need? This is possible. It is here today, and I think technologies, as we see them evolve, will help us achieve this at a much rapid pace.
And if you haven't seen it, it is a very cool system what Docebo is doing with AI and learning. And let's talk about putting the person back in personalization. So one of the trends that's happening is adaptive learning. Just by show of hands, who's who's currently implementing adaptive learning in their trainings? Raise them high. Raise them high. 1, 2, 3. So we've got about 4 people that are currently using adaptive learning. That's phenomenal. Adaptive learning really goes into several aspects. It goes into roles. It goes into understanding where people are at in the learning cycle. It goes into the ability to adapt on the fly for testing. So, do we have any nurses in the house? Any nurses? Nurses? No, we're all e-learning people. Okay, that makes sense. We're at DevLearn. One of the amazing things, a little case study, is that the personalization side of things really needs to go to the person at the moment and understanding what they are thinking, what they're doing, what their role is, how deep they're into their job, and the adaptability of that. The reason I ask if there's any nurses in the house is they're doing some amazing things with the nursing certification. So if you're a nurse, you start taking the certification to prove that you can be a nurse, and there is a variable from 75 questions to 250 questions that you can take based on your proficiency. So think about this. If Alessio, who's way smarter than I am, and I take the exact same test...
Don't believe him.
Then because Alessio is proving proficiency and moving up the ladder, the test adapts to his proficiency. And based on the consistency of his proficiency, then the test says, you know what? At some point, we know Alessio has answered this easy question, a little bit harder, really hard, and he's answered several hard questions in a row. He's done. On the other side of things, if I'm taking the test and I drop below proficiency, if I don't ramp up and get above proficiency at a certain point, then all of a sudden, my test is done. But if I can ramp back up and get above proficiency, then the same pattern happens on top of the line as it did underneath. So I can travel in and out of that line until a certain point where, you know, my test may have 150 questions, Alessio's has 75. Because it's adapting to the person. It's adapting to what they know and how they are able to take the test.
And as far as personalization and connected to the next point is adaptation and technologies can help one another. You can click on the next one. What I mean by that is, with the example of the test, there's also a chance that not every single individual learns instructions or adopts instructions in the same way. It is very evident that baby boomers, millennials, Generation Z have different learning patterns. And so the world that we see ahead of us is one where we allow instructional leaders to bring back and spend time in using their intellect to creating instructions that are actually efficient for the audiences that are going to be working with. We see a world where artificial intelligence and machine learning can help craft these instructions in a channel of delivery that is the most appropriate for the audience that is going to receive that. So if I create an instruction and I say, I want my audience to learn about these compliance regulations, there's a chance that I myself would be more inclined to look at that in the format of a video. However, Robin, whom is 24 years old, may not want the same format. And just leaving that decision to a single human being when there is a multitude of data points, it seems simplistic. That's why we see machine learning and AI as an enhancing layer of the learning that takes place. let's have AI help us determine the better channels for different people to learn in a separate way. So I recently discovered, not too long ago, that I was a stretch millennial. I was born in 1980, so I was very proud of it. And when my thank you, And when my colleagues were much younger than me in the business, as we're hiring more and more smart people, they were like, "Oh, yeah, you're old," and I'm like, "Listen, I'm still a millennial, man. I just found that out on Wikipedia." But then Gen Z arrived, and they messed it all up. What I find fascinating in reading a lot of research is this Gen Z, meaning people, mid-90s population, they're different. I see that with my nieces, they're different. Statistics are, they reach to their phone for any content on average every 7 or 8 minutes. Videos, they used to be for people like me, the learning principle, are now substituted by icons, images, and symbols. And most importantly, one thing that instructional leaders need to take care of and consider in the learning strategy, and AI should be fed with that information so that it can help us design content accordingly, is they are absolutely impatient. They have no patience for slowness of content, not finding the right button at the right time, not being able to process through the flow of learning in the way they expect to. They'll just drop out. So those are some thoughts that allow us to, and help us to determine how we're going to be building our learning strategies, whether it's for a certain channel of delivery or another, like, for example, mobile.
So mobile learning is living up to the hype, and it will for a while. So mobile learning is sticking around. This is something, if you're not doing mobile learning, it's time. It's time to start. Mobile learning is here, and it's here for the foreseeable future. And just to go into some of the stats around mobile learning. So 64% of learners find accessing their training content from a mobile device essential. So more than half are saying this is an absolute essential. I have to be able to see it from my phone. Along with that, 46% of learners use mobile learning before they go to sleep at night.
Sorry, Curtis. Speaking of mobile,
selfie. Here we go. We got our millennial over here. I don't qualify. You're younger than me. But we've got mobile learners that are doing it before they go to bed. Anybody pick up their phone before you go to bed and do some learning? Come on, raise your hands. Raise them. Let's see it. Oh, don't be shy. Come on. Who learns before they go to bed? That's right. A lot of us do that. And it's on the device that's with you, on the subway, on your commute. It's with you everywhere. So mobile learning is very key. Along with that, the number of mobile-only users, mobile-only, think about that. No desktop, mobile-only has grown 27%, and it's now surpassing desktop-only users. So desktop-only users are down to 14%. And finally, 71% of millennials say they connect more with mobile learning than with L&D activities. I know that's sad, but classroom training, they're not connecting with. What's on their phone? They are. They're growing up with these devices in their hands. Mobile is here to stay. So, along with that, this is one of my favorite stats. 43% of these mobile learners see improved productivity levels compared to non-mobile learners. So not only do they prefer it, but the result of mobile learning is pretty astounding. Yep. We'll keep it up here. Go ahead, take that picture. It's a good one to take a picture of. There we go. And transition. Oh, wait, one more. And transition. Go. Okay. All right, and finally, oh, this is your slide, Alessio. So,
Yeah, it is not a surprise that those that are empowered with channels that allow them to make the best out of learning anytime, anywhere can go through learning faster. Now, we should always keep in mind whether faster is better or not, but at the same time, it is a fact. There's also populations that live in areas where connectivity is not always an assumption. And so being able to go through learning in offline modalities is a powerful possibility that mobile allows us to do.
so let's just run through some of these to talk about mobile. The average person spends 2 hours and 51 minutes on their smartphone each day. Does that seem low to anyone else? I see heads nodding all over the place. Looking at it roughly 221 times. Does that just go? Think about that. Do you do that? Do I do that? 221 times per day. Touching its screen more than 2,600 times. Let's all practice. Ready? There it is. Who's doing it? Facebook, LinkedIn, the DevLearn app, right? We're doing this 2,600 times a day. And finally, the number of mobile-only users, 20%, we talked about this, has grown and is surpassing the 14% of desktop users.
I was doing it again.
You're such a millennial.
Perfect example. Can go next. How many of you guys are involved with internal learning initiatives, meaning for your employees? Can you raise a hand? Now, how many of you are also involved with external learners, customers, providers, partners? How many do both at the same time? There you go, very few. That is so interesting to me. So there's this world where, or concept that we're coming from, where HR took care, and learning and development took care of the learning of our employee base. And then a recognition as the learning industry matured and the technologies advanced that, guess what? Even our customers or partners or members or associates, people that are not necessarily in our business, need learning. And so what happened, interestingly, we now created multiple functions across the same organizations, where now you have multiple learning and development organizations within the same organization that are working towards similar goals, just for different audiences. How many of those that actually have internal learning initiatives struggle with getting budgets and resources and staff to accomplish what they want? I find that fascinating. I was speaking to somebody yesterday that is tasked with a massive internal learning project in a big technological organizations. And the first complaint was, I don't have enough people, I don't have enough money to do what I want, and it's just internal. So I asked her, how is it going with your customers? I was like, well, there's plenty of money there. because it's seen as a revenue generating tool. So I find that there's a fundamental couple of bugs in the process. The number one is, we learning leaders need to make aware our organizations of the cost that it takes to not implement good internal learning programs. Because compliance failure or lack of understanding of products and services yield millions of dollars of damages. So that to me is worth it, number one. Number two, for the concept of money available, perhaps it would be interesting to see internal organizations and external organizations work together. And we work with big companies that have the tendency to consider those worlds apart. It's fascinating how you have the same colleagues where the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, and oftentimes efforts are duplicated, systems are duplicated, costs are duplicated. It's just a change management that we're seeing in the industry, but definitely we need to acknowledge that internal learning only is no more, and external learning are embracing it in what we call the extended enterprise model.
Awesome.
Speaking of enterprises, at Docebo, this is not, disclaimer, I'm not allowed to sell. I can't sell anything. But I can tell you accomplishments that we've achieved. And we're very proud of having worked with Swisscom. Have you guys heard about this company? It's a big European international brand. Can you raise a hand if you've heard of them? Okay, for those that haven't heard of them, look at them as one of the biggest European telco providers. Okay, and that is a world where learning and development typically would be what I would call institutionally run, where content would be very much around compliance. It would be very top-down from instructors to learners. What was the problem that they faced? Number one, you go to the next slide. Number one problem was they couldn't keep up anymore with the demand of the business, meaning the learning and development organization couldn't bear the growth of the employee base as well as the complexity of requests they were getting. It was not scalable. Which in turn caused a massive misalignment of offering across various departments. So some were being taken care of and others abandoned. And so that created what? A sort of inconsistency across the business, which ends up creating personal impact, churn, and things that are very costly to the organization. So as part of a complete rehauling of learning organization, they decided with the new leadership in place in learning and development to switch entirely from a top-down learning design to a bottom-up one. Currently, about 5,000 employees per month using our platform, I'm very proud to say that, create content and share that with their peers. Now you might say, A, how do we ensure that the quality of the content is up to par? B, how do we encourage these people to create content? And I've asked that talking to the leadership of Swisscom. And the answers were interesting to me. Number one, in terms of how do we get people to do it, we don't ask them. We make it simple. And we create a culture of learning internally. It starts from the leadership, and it embraces everybody. If I come to you and say, you have to create a course on technology X for everybody, and your deadline is tomorrow, or next week, or in a month, psychologically you're receiving that as a task. Whereas, if I'm creating a collaboration and a culture where your contribution is going to make others better, and by you doing that, others will follow the same, and we're going to democratize learning. If that engine starts, it's very hard to stop. And that's what they did. It took a while, it took change management, but it's succeeding. The second thing is the quality. If I look at it as a pure instructional designer philosophy, I'm like, whoa, there's a bunch of people that have never created content, now they're all content creators. How scary is that? Well, how about we ask the people that took that learning if they liked it or not? And so they did. They ran surveys and they said, we gave you learning for years, and it was the one that I created as a learning development team. So recently we switched and now you're getting learning from John and Luke and Maria. How's that going? And the survey is saying 25% increase in appreciation of the learning results. 171%, if I remember correctly, engagement increase in the learning platform. I don't have all the answers. I don't think they have all the answers either. But that tells me that there's something here. That tells me that a world where learning is not just instructor to learners is possible, and every organization needs to find out the right calibration in order to enable it. But data shows that it is powerful.
So going along with those trends, you can see how powerful social learning is. This is another quick case study. We'll go through this one pretty quick, so if you want to take your pictures, take them fast. This is a public utility company, and they decided to jump on board with one of the trends of adaptive learning. And so this is something that eLearning Brothers helped them with. We can't say their name because they are a public utility, but they had 20 to 30 courses, and they needed to train over 23,000 people, spread over 70,000 square miles, and their ratings were only 3. It took per course about 1.15 hours, and it was heavily regulated. And this is the reason I put this on here is because a lot of people say, well, I can't do adaptive learning. I'm in a regulated environment. It's not true. This company, very, very regulated, extremely regulated, and we were still able to do adaptive learning. And the case study here, they were doing things like fire extinguisher training. How many people think they know how to use a fire extinguisher in this room? You pull the pin and you squeeze, right? An hour, 1.15 hours, pull the pin, squeeze. That's what was happening. And so I obviously exaggerate. It was more than that, where you point at, how you do it. But long story short is that through this adaptive learning, they said, let's figure out what people already know. Why do we need to teach them the things they already know? Let's figure it out beforehand and only teach them the things that they need to know. And so what happened is the rating went from a 3 to almost a perfect score, 4.8. The time on course went from above an hour down to 13 minutes per course, where before they were bringing them in at 70,000 square miles, bringing them into a central location to sit in a chair for an hour and learn how to pull the pin and squeeze. Now they were able to do it on their mobile devices and only spend 13 minutes because of the adaptive nature of it. We already knew what they knew because we had assessed that. Then we taught them what was left. We only taught them the remainder. And here's the big one. So what was the result? The result of training 23,000 employees with 20 to 30 courses was a whopping, well, just throw it out there. How much money do you think they saved? Estimated, come on, who knows? Just throw it out there. How much money did they save by changing their learning to adaptive learning? Who knows? You know. Come on, throw it out there. How much did they save? $2 million. That's a great guess. That's a really great guess. They saved $14 million by changing their standard classroom ILT training to mobile adaptive. I can be on the job during lunch and get certified on how to pull the pin and squeeze the fire extinguisher. And it will fit my form factor. If I'm in the field, I don't want a desk. I want a mobile device. So adapting it to have that produced an amazing effect. And the little footnote here, there were actually additional courses added, and the cumulative was a 20% reduction in training time. So here's a great stat by Technology Trends. 98% of all companies will use e-learning by 2020. And this is one that we need some participation. Yep, get out your camera. This is a good one because this is the slide you want to show your boss right here. This is the slide that says, hey boss, we need more money. And guess what? We have some stats to say that other people are doing this. So out of small business, average training budget, $376,000. So that's up to 100 employees. How many people fit in that category? Raise your hand if you fit in that category. One? What's that? Number of employees. Yeah. And how does that compare? Not even close? All right, let's bump it up. 1.1 or 1.5 million for 100 to 1,000 employees. Who fits in this category? We got a few more. How many of your budgets are over this number? Oh, wow. How many are under this number? Okay, take a picture of the slide, show your boss. And finally, 1,000 plus employees, $17 million. Raise your hands. All right, how many are over $17 million in your budget? How many are under? A lot more. All right. So this is what's happening right now. These are the trends. This is the amount of money that people are spending. And we get this data from our friends here at the eLearning Guild. So just a couple more stats. 94% of employees would stay with a company longer if they invested in their career development. Another one to show your boss. And the upper ups to say, hey, we need this. And 56% of employees would spend more time learning if their manager suggested a course to improve their skills. And go. Mark, set, go. There we go. All right. I think we're just about at time. So we've got one more slide. And
we're happy to take your questions. These are some recommended takeaways. And there's one here that I don't think we included that I'd like to perhaps challenge everybody in doing as well is empower your learners. Think about giving them a bit more the ability to make their own contribution in your learning strategy and figure out how that can play out in your own company. That doesn't mean that's gonna cut off anybody's job. Perhaps it's just gonna make some of them a little bit better at what they do.
Awesome. How much do we have for questions? 5? All right, we got a couple minutes for questions. What questions do you have for us?
I'm just wondering if, can you hear me?
It's not working.
I'm just wondering if you've seen social learning be successful with any external learning for clients and partners.
Actually, let's get it one more time now that we have the mic.
Thanks. So I'm wondering if social learning, if you've ever seen it be successful with external audiences like clients and partners, as opposed to when you don't have that top-down approach, ability.
That's a really good question. And the answer is yes. And we've seen that, especially across industries such as tech, with tech customers that do have cohorts of customers in certain industries and sectors. And what they've done, they've created what I would call a community 2.0 of learning for their own customers, where different customers can go in and create learning or social learning initiatives in cohorts that relate to their specific area. So I'll give you an example. You can, in our platforms and others, configure the system so that you have areas for each and every organization that you work with and enable them to create learning within that cohort or area. So we've seen that and a few other cases also in the healthcare business. I'd like to connect and send you a couple of case studies about that.
Yeah, and like I said before, if you haven't been to Docebo and downloaded the reports, the infographics, they're phenomenal. You need to do it. All right, one more question? Okay, one more question. Oh, in the back. Here we go.
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's do it.
I'm coming around. Here we go.
So I apologize if this was already answered, but because I came in late. When you say social learning, what do you mean? Are you meaning social learning on your phone? Like, or are you meaning interacting with others on
That's a great question.
the site or whatever?
Curtis, do you go or I go?
Go for it. You love this topic.
Okay. Can I ask you, have you ever heard of a framework of reference called the 70-20-10? So that is a good representation of a theory that seems also logical, where people learn more by sharing and coaching. And so what I refer to as when I speak about social learning is the ability for people to share knowledge that is so frequently hidden in an organization and not leveraged. Not all knowledge comes from some guru SME. There's probably people that do the job every day that actually have a pretty good knowledge. Well, let's empower them. That's one. And the second thing is giving coaches a voice. A coach doesn't have to be necessarily certified, a certified executive coach. Can be somebody in an organization that lives in another region that can be really good at that something, that can be a coach for somebody to improve a certain skills. So how about we give them tools and make it simple for them to share their mastery with others that may be geographically dispersed elsewhere, but make people better. So that's what I mean by social learning.
And there's some key principles.
Thank you for the question.
So this is really important, that you turn the learning into social, that I learn from you, you learn from me, but there's some key principles in the technology itself. You look at social platforms and what they do and why we do this 2,600 times a day. That's also very important, is to tap into the psychology of what happens on social networks. Well, I think that's our time. Thank you so much again for coming. And Zach, you want to come up and wrap us up?
Thank you guys for being here. Thank you.